in a war zone was kindness. On a scorched alien planet where silence means survival, one human prisoner refuses to play by the rules. He sings to machines, jokes with guards, and cleans battle-scarred corridors like they matter. The commander watching him from behind cold glass has never smiled, until now. This isn't a love story. It's a story about breaking walls without firing a shot. And it all begins with a mop and a smile. Stay with us, because this one might change the way you see hope. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The sky above Velmara 9 was thick with smoke and scattered sparks. Long trails of fire curled behind the last wave of retreating drones. Somewhere above, the remains of a shattered orbital shield burned in silence, turning the horizon a dull, orange glow. At the edge of a tall platform, Commander Avenya stood still, her dark uniform tugged by the wind like it wanted her to leave. Her silver eyes scanned the line of human prisoners being marched across the steel walk below. Most looked down, tired, broken, barely moving. But one didn't. He walked with an odd bounce in his step, like he wasn't in the middle of an enemy outpost but maybe taking a walk through a park. He wasn't tall, not by Solari standards, and his armor was a mess. One side looked melted, the other stained in blotches of color that might have once been food. A smear of grease stretched across one cheek, like a child's attempt at war paint. He was out of place, strange even for a captured human. And then he sneezed loudly before squinting up at the smoky sky. Name? The intake officer asked. Jem Caro. Corporal. Serial number. 77 Delta. Or was it 88 Alpha? One of those. He paused. Wait, is this the part where I'm only supposed to say my name and rank? Because if it is, I forgot my interrogation. Handbook in my other pants. The officer blinked. This is not an interrogation. This is processing. Oh, great. Then you'll also need my food preferences. No mushrooms. I'm allergic to glint fruit. And kale? That's not food. That's a cry for help. Commander Avenya turned away before anyone could see the twitch at the corner of her mouth. She told herself it was just the wind. Later that cycle, she reviewed his file on her datapad. No awards, no major marks of service. Just one disciplinary note about converting a repair bot into a karaoke machine. His psychological profile read, unusual coping methods, not suited for structured command. She tapped a tab to review. Combat footage. In the middle of a chaotic battlefield, there he was, Jem Caro, hiding behind a half-crushed vehicle, shouting instructions into his comm while throwing what looked like protein bars at a flying enemy drone. The drone had paused, scanned the incoming snacks, and then exploded in midair. It had worked. Avenya had seen many tactics in her time. Snack-based distraction was a first. The next day, Jem was assigned to sanitation duty in the lower corridors of the base. When he was handed the mop, he looked at the guard and asked, "Can I get one with a flamethrower setting? You know, for the tough stains and ambushes." The guard ignored him, but the commander, watching from a hidden observation panel, turned up the audio. Within hours, he had named one of the drone cleaners, Blinky, and another Bucket. He reprogrammed a floor scrubber to play soft, music from Earth, strange, happy tunes about dancing in zero gravity and lost pets on Mars. One hallway that hadn't smelled clean in months now carried a faint citrus scent. Avenya's AI system flagged the activity as an environmental deviation. She dismissed the alert without comment. Later that cycle, her second-in-command, Kale, entered her chamber with a stiff expression and a datapad in hand. "Commander, the human prisoner, Jem Caro, has been causing irregularities." She nodded once. "I am aware. The maintenance drones are starting to copy his behavior. One refused to return to recharge. It said it was practicing its choreography." Avenya kept her eyes on her screen. "Are the corridors cleaner?" Kyle hesitated. "Yes, but..." "Then leave him be." She thought that would be the end of it. But that same evening, she made a private adjustment to his assignment. Jem was now responsible for cleaning the observation corridor just outside her command chamber. He arrived on time the next morning, saluted the security camera, and said, "Good morning, mysterious prison overlords. Today's playlist is called Funk Before Dawn. You're welcome." For 23 minutes, she watched him argue with a squeegee. He lost. Magnificently. On the fourth day, he stood in front of the one-way window. He couldn't possibly see her, but his eyes rested on the glass anyway. "To whoever's in there," he said quietly, "thanks for the new view. Less mold, still emotionally intense. But hey, progress." Avenya told herself it was a coincidence. By the seventh day, she knew all 12 songs on his playlist. She found herself humming one during a morning report. Kyle had given her a strange look, the kind usually reserved for engine malfunctions or acts of treason. That night she watched him again, mop in hand, boots squeaking slightly on the now spotless floor. A drone floated lazily behind him, lights blinking in rhythm to the music. Jem turned toward it and said, "We're making art, Blinky. Dirty, wet art. But still." Commander Avenya, feared leader of Velmara 9's outer sector, closed her datapad and sat back in her chair. She'd faced invasion fleets and political betrayals. She had buried friends and burned bridges. But this strange, smiling prisoner with his messy armor and ridiculous songs, she didn't know what to make of him. And for the first time in a very long while, she found herself wanting to. The halls of Velmara 9's command base had never known music before Jem Caro arrived. Now low melodies hummed from reprogrammed maintenance drones as they followed him like curious pets. The once silent corridors echoed with cheerful tunes, soft footsteps, and the occasional joke delivered to no one in particular. Jem spoke to the bots as if they were old friends. He gave each a name, Fizz, Spinner, and one particularly slow drone he affectionately called Mopzilla. Most of the guards ignored his chatter. One rolled his eyes and said, "The humans cracked." But the drones, and someone else, were listening. Commander Avenya had started reviewing the surveillance footage every evening. At first it was just a curiosity. Now it was a routine. She watched Jem sweep floors like it was a dance. He spun, hummed, even bowed when he passed security panels. The base's sensors picked up improvements in morale among the staff, though no one said it aloud. The air felt lighter. The silence, less heavy. On the 8th day, he built a sculpture from spare wires and scrap metal, a tiny figure with long ears and a mop held high like a sword. He placed it on the windowsill outside the observation corridor. Avenya stared at it for a long time, saying nothing. Later she summoned him. Not for punishment, not officially. The order was worded as a behavioral efficiency review. He was escorted into her chamber, wiping grease from his fingers with the back of his sleeve. "Nice place," he said. "Not as drafty as the mop closet. Smells less like despair, too." Avenya didn't speak right away. She stood, watching him with her usual calm. "You are aware this is not a place for entertainment," she said. "Finally." "Absolutely." He nodded. "No juggling, no confetti, very professional. I brought nothing but my best manners and at least one clean sock." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet you persist with this behavior." "Cleaning," he offered. "Entertainment, conversation, music. I figured if I have to scrub floors, I might as well do it with style. And let's be honest, your drones were kinda bored." She frowned. "Machines do not experience boredom." "They do now," he said, grinning. "Fizz hums when we clean the medbay. Spinner won't even start unless I play the same song first. It's like weird little routines like people." Avenya sat down slowly. "You speak to machines as if they were alive." Jem shrugged. "They're around. I talk. Sometimes it helps." "Helps with what?" He met her eyes. "With being here." She didn't reply. Instead, she looked at the small flower-shaped object he placed on her desk. Scrap metal, bent carefully to resemble petals. "This is not permitted." "It's not a bribe," he said quickly. "Just a thing I made. If it's against the rules, I'll take it back." She didn't move. didn't return it. Just looked at it like it was something from another world. Maybe it was. You joke too much, she said. It's a survival strategy. You've survived, stop doing it. He smiled. I'll try. No promises. When he left, Avenya didn't order the gift removed. She placed it on a small shelf, beside her datapads. That night she watched old recordings of him talking to a broken pipe as if it were a stubborn friend. You're doing amazing, buddy, he said, wrapping it in spare laces. It held. A few cycles later, the corridors were cleaner than ever. More than that, they felt alive. Some officers claimed they worked better with the music. One even adjusted their patrol route just to pass through Jem's sector. Avenya said nothing about it. But trouble had started to brew. One morning, her second-in-command, Kyle, returned with new concerns. There have been 3 minor systems failures this week, all near the prisoner. Avenya stood still. Sabotage? Unclear. But the security teams are asking if his presence is influencing operations. She turned to the monitor showing Jem trying to fix a cracked panel with duct tape and patience. He's not the cause. Commander, they think you're compromised. I am not. They believe you've allowed him too much freedom, that he's manipulating you. Avenya said nothing for a long moment. Then, calmly, she replied, Is the base more stable than before? Yes. Is morale higher? Kyle hesitated. Yes, but then let them think what they want. The next cycle, she passed through a corridor and caught a sound. Jem, singing softly while mopping. It was an earth song, strange and off-key. She didn't stop him. She didn't speak. But for the first time in a long while, her steps slowed. That night, she ordered a scan of his work area, not for threats, just to understand what he was building from spare wires. One piece looked like a sun, another like a pair of boots, and one, a perfect circle with a crack down the middle, shaped like a heart. Her fingers brushed the edge of the scrap flower on her shelf. She still didn't understand Jem Caro, but she no longer wanted to stop watching. Rain came to Velmara. 9 in short, sharp bursts. It wasn't like Earth's gentle showers. It hit the metal rooftops like dropped pebbles, fast and sudden, then vanished as if it had second thoughts. Jem Caro stood in the middle of the repair corridor, ankle deep in coolant again, holding a broken panel that hummed like it was trying to apologize. Behind him, the small diagnostic drone he had named Clip blinked orange. That usually meant, this is about to go very wrong. Jem sighed, wiped his face with an already soaked sleeve and said, Clip, if this thing explodes, I'm telling Command it was your idea. He wasn't supposed to be here. Officially, he was still a prisoner, with limited access. Unofficially, Commander Avenya had allowed him more freedom, first to fix pipes, then to assist drones, and now to run checks on minor systems. It started as curiosity, maybe even a test, but something had changed. She noticed it in how people acted around him. The guards, once silent and cold, had begun to nod at him. A few even asked for his help with small repairs. The drones followed him like pets, adjusting to his voice, syncing with his rhythm. The base itself seemed to soften wherever he went. Not everyone approved. Rumors had started to spread. Quiet. At first whispered behind closed doors, then louder. Some believed Jem was manipulating the commander, using charm or tricks to gain trust. Others said Avenya was becoming weak, too human in her thinking. She didn't answer those rumors. She watched him work, listened to his terrible singing, and tried to understand why it made her chest feel less tight. One morning, she found him sitting cross-legged in the power bay, repairing a sensor module, with a spoon and a strip of tape. He looked up, startled but not afraid. "Commander," he said with a grin, "just adjusting this relic. It was sending distress signals every time someone sneezed. You were not assigned to this sector. I wasn't, no. But the alerts were messing with Clip's rhythm. You know how he gets." She stepped closer, arms crossed. "You're interfering with military systems. I'm improving them. And if I told you to stop?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, Then I would. But not because I'm afraid, because I respect you. Avenya said nothing. Instead, she sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. The silence stretched between them. Outside, a low alarm buzzed once and then went quiet. "You're very strange," she finally said. "I've been told. You're not like other humans. Most humans aren't like each other," he said. "But I get it, I'm not a soldier. Not in the usual way. I'm just trying to make it to tomorrow." "And the singing? The jokes? They keep me sane." She nodded slowly. "And me?" He smiled. Not wide, just enough. "You remind me of the kind of person I wanted to become. Strong, focused, brave." She looked away quickly. "I'm not brave. I built walls so no one could get close. And I painted them with bad songs and mop art." She laughed once, very softly, and it surprised them both. Later that day, Avenya sat in her chamber and watched old footage again. Jem fixing things, talking to bots, smiling at strangers who didn't smile back. He had a way of filling empty rooms, not with noise but with presence. Her second-in-command, Kyle, interrupted the moment with a grim face and a data pad. "There's been another malfunction. This one nearly caused a breach in the storage wing. All systems point to proximity sabotage." "Near Jem?" she asked. "Yes, same as the others. Has he been warned?" "He hasn't been informed, but we believe he's the target." Avenya stood. Her voice was sharper now. "Assign him a second observer. Quiet. No armor. If anyone interferes with his work, I want to know." Kale looked at her. "You believe he's innocent?" "I believe," she said, "that he's not the one causing damage. He's the one keeping things from falling apart." That night, Jem found a small box outside his quarters. Inside was a new datapad case, black metal etched with stars. Not the stars of any map, but a shape that looked like a man holding a mop with exaggerated ears. He turned it over in his hands, smiled, and said to Clip, "She's either warming up to me or planning to explode me with style." The next morning, the commander walked into the corridor where Jem was installing a new set of wall brackets. She didn't speak right away. He looked up, surprised but not flustered. "They think you're manipulating me," she said. "Are you asking if I am?" "No. I'm asking if I'm letting you." He stood, brushed off his hands. "I'm not here to win favors. I'm just trying to stay human in a place that forgot what that means." She stared at him, her voice low. "You broke through walls I didn't know I still had. I didn't mean to. I know." There was silence again, the kind that felt like something just beginning. Behind them, Clip blinked blue. Jem smiled gently. "I'll keep fixing what I can," he said. "Even if it's not on the map." This time she didn't tell him to stop. The corridor was unusually quiet. Jem Caro stood with his boots soaked in coolant, holding a tangled stabilizer unit like it had betrayed him. Above, a warning siren flickered half-heartedly, unsure whether to sound the alarm or take a nap. The drone Clip hovered beside him, blinking orange. A signal Jem had come to understand as, "This is bad, but also somehow your fault." He wiped sweat from his brow with his sleeve and gave the broken unit a look. "If this thing leaks again, Clip, we're calling it a spa day and selling tickets." He didn't hear her approach. Commander Avenya moved like a shadow, silent, precise. She stopped at the edge of the corridor and watched him. Her arms were behind her back, but not stiffly like usual. There was something different in her posture. Not weakness. Maybe hesitation. When he finally noticed her, he gave a small wave and straightened up. "I see you survived another round with unstable equipment," she said. "Part of my beauty routine," he replied, grinning. "Steam, panic, and mild radiation exposure. Great for the skin." She stepped closer, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. "There have been more accidents, 3 this cycle, always near you." "I'm flattered," he said. "Looks like my fan club is getting creative. I believe someone is testing you." "Well, I hope I'm passing. My resilience is mostly caffeine and blind hope. She tilted her head slightly, that look he'd come to recognize, somewhere between disapproval and quiet amusement, but her voice turned serious. They think you're manipulating me. Are you? He asked gently. I don't know. Her voice cracked slightly at the edges, just enough for him to notice. She turned her face away, as if the words were harder to say than she expected. I spent years building walls inside, where no one could reach me, where nothing soft could survive. Then you came with songs, jokes, and broken robots. And now, the walls feel more like a cage than a shield. Jem didn't move right away. He didn't want to break the moment by saying the wrong thing. Then he stepped closer. Not too close, just enough. I wasn't trying to change you, he said. I was just trying to survive. You looked like someone who had already survived. So much I thought, maybe if you could keep going, there was space for someone like me beside you. She looked at him, really looked. Her eyes, usually so sharp and unreadable, now softened slightly. You complimented me once, she said. And I didn't believe you. I meant it. I know that now. A quiet settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not tense, just real. Somewhere down the hall, another drone beeped in confusion. Probably the cafeteria bot mistaking a storage box for dinner again. I could be removed for this, she said. I could be vaporized, he replied with a shrug. Wouldn't be my worst day. I'm not planning to vaporize you. Then we're already better than my last relationship. She almost smiled. Almost. But her face stayed composed. Later that day, the sabotage was traced back to a small group of Solari loyalists. They believed Avenia had lost her focus, her strength, her edge. They didn't understand that she hadn't lost it. She had simply stopped turning it against everything that moved. The tribunal hearing was tense. The chamber was quiet as Avenia stood before them, head high, voice steady. When asked if she had compromised base security by allowing a human prisoner access to sensitive areas, she answered without hesitation. He was more effective at repairing systems, improving morale, and keeping drones operational than most officers assigned to this base. If that is compromise, perhaps we should redefine strength. The tribunal said nothing for a long moment. Then they dismissed the session in silence. No punishment, no support either. Just silence. Jem's status was changed from prisoner to cultural liaison, probationary. It wasn't freedom. But it wasn't a cell either. He now had a badge, a comm, and the very vague responsibility of promoting understanding. Mostly that meant fixing things, smiling at people who didn't smile back, and explaining why. Earth humor involved so many banana jokes. Avenia stayed in command. But something shifted. Officers reported her being more open. She still gave orders like they were law, still moved like a blade, but the cold distance was gone. Rumors said she had even laughed, loudly, during a banquet when Jem mistook a ceremonial water bowl for soup and declared it the best thing he'd ever tasted. On the 100th day after the final ceasefire, Avenia and Jem stood on a platform overlooking the newly rebuilt fusion fields. The air was clear, the stars above were quiet. Jem handed her a small object wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully. Inside was a music chip labeled "Songs That Make You Smile" or "Twitch." "You are relentless," she said. "Some people collect stones, I collect reactions." She slid the chip into her datapad. Soft music started. Something silly, familiar, warm. "You're truly beautiful," he said again without sarcasm. Even when she scowled at him, even when she wore her armor like a second skin. She didn't speak. She took his hand instead. Long, fingers cool and steady. Her grip was firm but not guarded. "Don't mock me," she whispered, "wouldn't dream of it." And for the first time in many long cycles, after war, fear, and silence, Commander Avenia let herself believe in something as simple and as wildly powerful as hope. Above them, the stars spun on. But below, two strange creatures stood quietly together, no longer enemies, no longer alone.